Alright, I just completed the 4th turn, and I'll be starting the 5th turn shortly. Been fairly interesting so far. Well, interesting in the fact that each turn I have no idea what I'm doing, so I learn something new every time. Mainly have no idea what I'm doing just because you're dealing with 6 different factions, and that brings with it a certain knowledge of what you need to do with each faction, knowledge that I don't necessarily have. I have some general ideas on what each faction should be doing, and the game tells you which regimes particular factions can win in. So, for example, the Feuillants, they want to try and keep the regime legislative for the whole game. Naturally, the other factions, your revolutionary factions, are going to team up and try and avoid that particular result. So they will look to move either to the convention, particularly if you're the Gironde, or they will look to move to the Terror if you're the Mountain or the Sans-Culotte, because those factions have a chance of winning if the game ends in that particular regime. So, from that regard what you should be doing. If you're the Mountain or the Sans-Culotte faction, you want to do things that will try and facilitate the change of the regime from legislative to terror. Or if you're the Gironde, you want to do things that will facilitate change from legislative to convention. But of course, executing all that is the real trick. So I've been sort of blundering around with each faction, choosing objectives that either succeed or fail. For the most part, they fail because other factions will see what those objectives are. It's public knowledge, and will attempt to, if the objective is to plot in a particular region, then the faction controlling the government, which for turns 3 and 4 was the Gironde, they would try and arrest personalities in particular regions that were an objective for a particular faction. So, in this case, if I believe in the last turn, the Feuillants had a personality in Angoulême there, and their objective was to plot Angoulême. In this case, I guess the Feuillants are not arrestable personalities, but I think in this case the Sans-Culotte personality there opted to use the... Oh no, that couldn't be right either. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. You've got 2 options. You can the government can arrest people, or factions that control a particular region can try and boot somebody out of there if there's a foreign personality there trying to plot in that region. So, using Bordeaux as an example, the Feuillants could choose to spend money on a personality action to try and boot this Girondine personality out of Bordeaux. Obviously, they didn't this turn because that personality is still there. But in one of these regions, and now I don't remember which one, I think it may have been the Royalists who were trying to plot in Marseille, because if they plot there, they can get a British fleet to arrive during a regime change. I think the Royalists had a personality there in the legislative regime while the Girondin was controlling the government, and the Girondin said, well, we're going to arrest that guy. We don't want him to be in Marseille to give that region up to the Royalists and potentially invasion by an English fleet. So they chose to arrest that personality and kicked him out of there. So you get these little things like this where factions try and, with those objectives, they end up having to sort of announce what they're trying to do, and that gives other factions the possibility to try and counter that move. And then, if they can counter it, in this case, the Royalist personality was arrested in Marseille, And since their objective was to plot in Marseille, they could now no longer fulfill that objective, meaning that at the end of the turn, with their unfulfilled objective, they will lose a point of fame, which we remember is down here on this track. And as you can see, it's definitely shifted than what it was earlier. And amazingly, despite the fact that the Girondins ran a successful coup on the third turn in order to seize control of the government, their fame is miserable. And part of that is because they've consistently, turn after turn, failed to achieve their objectives. The same thing for the Royalists. So it is very, very difficult for those two factions to actually accomplish anything now because their fame is so low. As your fame gets lower, you have a much more difficult time successfully accomplishing objectives on the resolution chart here. As you can see there, the lower your fame is there on that top column, the harder it is, the higher a die roll you're going to need to achieve any kind of success. So the result being an A is usually going to be a success. So as you can see here, the higher your fame, the easier things get. The lower your fame, the harder things get. So for the Girondin and Royalist factions there, not so good. On the other hand, right now, the mountain is flying high. And no wonder they're doing so well, because on this last turn, on turn 4, they were able to install the terror. So now we are in the terror regime. And although, interestingly enough, a random event raised the commune back on turn 3. However, it raised the commune and switched Paris to neutral. Now, in the rules, once the commune is raised, Paris no longer functions like a normal zone, so you can't simply control Paris. At least that's my reading of the rules, which to me seems wrong. It seems like, because that puts you in a position of, if you're a faction that wants the commune raised, but needs to have control of the commune in order to effectuate change, the result is that you now have a commune that benefits nobody in Paris, because in order to, for example, for the mountain to install the terror, they have to have control of the commune, or the sans-culotte has to have control of the commune in order to install the terror. Well, to get control of the commune, if Paris is neutral, my understanding of the rules is you first have to suppress the commune and then re-raise it. Now, in this instance, the commune track had been bumped up to 20, because once the commune raised via random event and Paris went neutral, at the time the Girondins were in control of the government, and they wanted to try and suppress the commune, but they had a terrible... The Girondins, the sans-culotte, and the mountain are the only three factions that can actually suppress the commune via a regional action when the regime is legislative. So, but unfortunately, the Girondins and the mountain both take large negative modifiers when trying to suppress the commune. And when the commune's up at level 3, which is up there between 17 and 20 on the track, it makes it very, very difficult to suppress the commune without an extremely high die roll. Well, if you're facing this massive negative modifier, it makes it even harder. So what the Girondins did, is in charge of the government, they sent revolutionary armies into Paris to try and squash the commune militarily, and then potentially could re-raise it the following turn under their control and change the regime to convention, which is the most ideal regime for them. Well, they did miserably on their combat rolls to remove the commune from Paris. So as a result, the commune stayed there neutral. So on the following turn, the sans-culotte and the mountain both made moves to try and suppress the commune. And actually the mountain went first, so their objective was to suppress the commune. They succeeded at that, but they ran out of money to then try and to raise the commune later in the turn, this is something that's in the rules. The commune can be suppressed by a faction and raised by that same faction in the same turn. However, the mountain had been short on cash. They didn't have enough. They had enough cash to suppress the commune. They did not have enough cash to raise the commune. As a result, the sans-culottes pounced on this potential weakness and thought, hey, we'll let the mountain do the suppressing, and then we'll just swoop in. Since we go after the mountain in the turn order, we'll just swoop in and raise it, and we'll be in control then. Now, what that means is, since we have foreign armies, or did have foreign armies adjacent to Paris, actually we still do, got one up there in Amiens. Foreign armies adjacent to Paris and the commune raised, that means that whoever controlled the commune could opt to move to the next regime. In this case, the sans-culottes controlled the commune, so they moved it to the terror. The terror regime has the mountain in charge of the government, but that still benefits the sans-culottes, because the sans-culottes can still win during the terror regime, and in fact can potentially seize power or seize the government from control of the mountain. So it was still in the sans-culottes' best interest to install the terror, even though they would not be in control of the government. But what they did get out of it was the all-important control of Paris, or in this case, of the commune. That's going to be beneficial to them later on. Paris is worth a lot of money, and the commune, being in control of the commune, gives them a substantial bit of power there in Paris. So that's where we stand. Yeah, and I'm sure you're thinking, wow, that's just as clear as mud. It makes absolutely no sense. Just sounds like a bunch of gibberish of factions controlling this or that, and I don't even know how you could ever keep it all straight. The game sounds unplayable to me. Hearing it without reading the rules, yes, I would agree. It sounds completely baffling. How on earth could this make any sense? I'm getting tongue-tied just trying to even explain it. But I can guarantee you it does make a kind of crazy sense when you have the rules laid out in front of you. And again, and there's lots of ambiguity in those rules. Fortunately, there's some errata that have cleared up some of those ambiguities that have helped me. Things that I wouldn't be, just reading the rules themselves, wouldn't be clear on without some errata that I found out on the interwebs. So things like that help. But it is very chaotic, and I'm still blundering through, unsure of what I'm doing. But you can start to see the kind of things that each faction wants to sort of shoot for. And the real trick is being able to be successful at any of those things. Some factions are essentially crippled, and there's some things that start affecting all factions to the detriment of all factions. You'll notice currently the green track there is the economy track. That has a profound effect on how much stuff costs. As you can see, we're right at 16 there. That's level 2 on the economy track, which is an inflation level that makes everything, the normal cost of everything, double. So already that's had real problems for the government in attempting to perform arrests and, more importantly, to maintain armies and to recruit more armies and pass laws. So on this next turn, you can bet the mountain is going to be suggesting laws that are going to reduce that inflation level, and hopefully those laws will pass. Now that we're in the terror, the assembly, the number of deputies in the assembly here has changed, and it's basically just Marais and Mountain are all that's left, with some hidden sans-culottes deputies there that aren't really going to have much of an effect. The Gironde and the Royalists and the Feuillants have all been essentially expelled from the government. The Feuillants would have hidden deputies, but they didn't have control of enough regions to have any representation, so they're essentially out of the government. But unlike the legislative regime that we started in, the voting in the terror is actually done by die rolls on your handy-dandy resolution chart. Well, so, your assembly, the number of people you have in the assembly doesn't have as much effect now. You're just going to be rolling to see what laws pass. Regardless, the mountain, realizing that we can't have level 3 inflation, that just sort of prevents anybody from doing anything, is going to try and pass as many laws as they can next turn that will reduce that inflation level. And then they get lucky, and maybe some random events or something will reduce that inflation level as well. So you have this sort of just total churning chaos at the moment. The country's at war. With the installation of the terror regime, you had every Girondin controlled region busted into revolt, so there'll be some quelling of revolts. You've had some armies fighting. Some of the foreign armies have been destroyed in Strasbourg and Metz. The revolutionary armies have teamed up and managed to destroy those armies. On the other hand, you've got coalition armies that have swooped in through the north here, and are now sitting in Amiens and controlling some pretty valuable property there, taking that money away from the government. Likewise, down here, when the terror was installed in Marseille, you had a Sardinian army. Sardinian, ridiculous. Sardinian army invaded, and some Spanish armies in Toulouse and Montpellier. And also, I believe there's another foreign army, the Quiberon army there in Nantes. And they're all making their way towards Paris. So all of these revolts and armies and things essentially favor the royalist. The government can just collapse if things get too out of hand, and that'll allow the royalists to swoop back in and gain control. Plus, the royalists can start raising their own armies at this point, which can also cause lots of problems. So, again, you've just got this country that's just boiling chaos at the moment. So the mountain will now try and use the terror to kind of try and regain control of the country through stomping out some of these revolts, which they get bonuses in dealing with. They can put Carnot in charge of one of the revolutionary armies, give them a little bonus. And of course, they can also start cutting off heads, which will most likely happen. It didn't happen this turn. There was only two. Louis XVI gets imprisoned at the start of the terror. D'André was already in prison there, and we rolled on this past turn to see if he would lose his head. He did not. He was fortunate. He remains in prison, but I don't hold out hope for him lasting much longer. So, as you can see, things a bit chaotic. We'll see whether the mountain can cut off enough heads to wrangle things back under control, or whether we'll see more regime change or total collapse, or what. It could go in any direction. Kind of exciting, but I'm sure to anybody watching this, completely baffling. I'll be back with more later.